Hello, everyone. Welcome to Pep Talk, Pepperdine University's podcast dedicated to sparking conversations of personal and global significance featuring world-renowned professors, faculty, and students from across the university. In this Pep Talk series, we will be discussing relationships. Whether you are single or married, a parent or a grandparent, a professional or an executive, relationships are an essential part of our lives. Join us as we explore how to build relationships and navigate their challenges in today's world. Hello, and welcome back to Pep Learn's Boone Center for the Families podcast. My name is Alexa, and I'm your host today, along with Coby.
Hey, everybody. Good to be back.
And we are so excited to bring back Dee Dee Mayer, Senior Director of Relate Strong at the Boone Center for the Family.
It's so great to be back with you guys.
So good to have you. Well, today we're going to be discussing workplace relationships. So before I get going, I would love to share a key Bible verse that I thought would be great to open up the podcast with. Proverbs 27:17, as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. Whether we're mentors, mentees, teammates, or team leaders, we are shaped by those we work alongside. So Dee Dee, to start us off, let's just talk about general workplace relationships and why should we care about them?
You know, what's so funny is that verse, I just got a text from a friend of mine who we text back and forth and challenge each other, and he threw that verse through AI, and this is what the verse AI came back with him at, is that the value of relationships and interactions between friends emphasizes how the mutual support and challenges in friendship can lead to personal growth and improvement. And what a good picture, right, of what we're trying to establish as we start to think about workplace relationships and why they're so important.
Not bad from ChatGPT.
No, I think ChatGPT loves his coworkers or her. But why should we care about workplace relationships in this modern corporate world of NDAs, HR departments, high turnover rates that we read about all the time, and why are they worth investing in?
Okay, so just really practically.
Yeah.
Okay, so the reality is most of us spend a lot of time at work. In fact, more time at work than we would spend anywhere else, even with our families, more waking hours, right? And so it just would make sense that we'd want to invest in cultivating healthy relationships in the environment we work with. And then research would align with that. In fact, Gallup says that employees who have a best friend at work are 7 times more likely to be engaged in the work that they do. 7 times. And that's a huge number. And that's just not like our enjoyment. It impacts our productivity. It impacts employee retention. And then if Gallup's research weren't enough, having friendships in the work increases and enhances our job satisfaction. It reduces our stress. It also gives us fewer sick days. So when you think of it, whether you're an employee or the employer or boss, investing in healthy relationships in the workplace is a win for everybody.
I think that makes so much sense, just in that I think if you imagined, 50 years ago, what work looked like for most Americans or most modern people was so different, right? You weren't necessarily going off to the workplace. You had work that was somehow closely and intimately connected with your community for the most part, right? You were working on the farm or running the local barbershop, or you were making shoes or whatever, and you're on your front porch and you're interacting with people, right? And there was no really like separation between your just human communal family life and your work life. Right now, for better or for worse, a large percentage of us are going off somewhere from our home and community and spending, like you said, a large chunk of our time in a workplace, right? And I think it's not like we want to just turn off the actual human part of ourselves during that time, or that it would be healthy to do. I think of the show Severance is really popular right now.
Glad you brought that up.
I don't know. I don't know if you guys have been watching. Have you seen it, Dee Dee?
Yes, I have. And we've watched the first couple of episodes, and we're struggling. Both my husband and I are struggling. We're like, what is happening here?
I mean,
I skipped to season 2 and had people who knew season 1, and I feel like season 2 things have been crazy, especially just keeping up with on social media.
Well, these first 2 episodes, it already starts off.
Yeah.
Right? And that highlights this. You don't even remember anybody outside.
Exactly.
Right?
It's sort of mind-bending and eerie. And for any listeners out there who aren't familiar, right, the concept of the show is that there's this company that's performing some sort of top secret work to where they make certain employees who work on certain floors have a procedure called severance, where they will, when they enter their floor at work, forget all of their memories from home. And when they leave their floor at work and go home, they forget all of their memories from work. And so essentially they're two different selves. They have two different minds that have completely different sets of memories. And I think there's a lot of real world application and commentary going on here, but none of us want that when we go to work, right? We want to actually be human beings and have relationships and be fulfilled. And I think that to your point, right? I think Severance illustrates something about like people not feeling that in the modern workplace.
Yeah, and I'm not ruining anything. I mean, right from the get-go, there's an immediate struggle with what's happening here, and a struggle, particularly in the female character, of, I don't want this. This isn't what I want. I thought I wanted this, but this isn't what I want. And so we're really not designed for it. And most research on loneliness, we've talked about that in other episodes. A lot of our research on loneliness would tell us we're not made for it. And all research on teams, like Patrick Lencioni is one of the key leaders on organizational leadership, and his investment in all his work is on how do you create healthy teams. And the influence of trust on your ability to work well and co-labor and be vulnerable and operate in the knowledge of somebody else's gift, which is so counter to a lot of what's happening in our culture, right? And you guys could speak more to your experience in your generation, but for me, I've noticed a big shift, right, in a much more individualistic idea of stepping in and your personal trajectory and what you need to do to move forward, rather than this idea of coming in and staying for a longer period of time. And I think some of that's because we're not staying at jobs as long as we used to. Used to be you'd go into a job and you might spend your whole career in that place. It's less common. And so creating strategic and healthy relationships with colleagues at work does something different to us as human beings, right? It gives us an opportunity to be co-laboring over things together, purpose, our value, whatever it is that we're doing in our workplace. We're aligned under a common purpose. And there's something that happens in us. It's why teams, when we're growing up, are such an important part of forming who we become, because we don't carry the world on our shoulders. Our design, even as a body of Christ, is to do things together. And so investing in cultivating relationships at work where you can be known and have people that know you and know what's happening in your life and family at home, make work a better place to go, more fun place to go. I mean,
maybe we can talk a little bit more about certain relationships at work, such as maybe a coworker to a coworker. I know Coby and I are coworkers. We have a pretty good
Unfortunately,
we have a friendship, which is such a blessing. And maybe you could share a little bit more from your experience, like boss to employee or of that nature, and just what it talks about a little bit in the Bible and how.
Yeah. Well, just the weight we carry. I was just reading this morning in 1 Peter 3, and basically to those of you who are older, there is this transfer of information and this raising up a next generation to be better than yourselves. And so I think when you think about being a leader of an organization or a boss, and you look at what's my goal and strategy, I think all research would point to, if you invest in creating a team of people who enjoy working together with a common vision and a goal, that's actually one of the most strategic and productive decisions that you can make. Because we work better when we're connected to one another. And I know that's a little bit more countercultural, but bosses would do well to think of building friendships as a bonus, not as a bonus. Wait, let me say that again. Workplaces one more time. So bosses really should, rather than seeing friendship among colleagues as a bonus, really see it as a strategy to helping teams work more effectively together, retaining talent, retaining people that work well, and investing in relationship with them. I mean, at the Boone Center, we really prioritize. I mean, I figure if we teach this around the globe, we really need to practice it. And so we intentionally do things like grab lunch together. We get to know what's happening in our lives. We pray for one another every week, right? And those things bind us together. It's not just somebody that I happen to be working alongside. This has become somebody who knows about my life, prays for my life, prays for my family, prays for my husband, place for my kids, and I get to do the same for them. And it transforms the way we work together. And whether you're the boss, but setting that tone really can change and transform your workplace into a place that does conflict better.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I would be curious to hear a little bit more from you on is on a practical level, if you're a boss who realizes, hey, teams where people are actually bought in, where they believe in the vision, where they feel there's relational investment happening, where they're not just transactionally seeing what they can get out of it, right? These are the kind of workplaces we all want, right? And paradoxically, like they're going to be a lot more successful on the bottom line. But if all you care about is the bottom line, you're not going to get to it. And so I guess, my question is how do you create a work environment that actually cultivates this? Because I think, I'm referencing every Office TV show possible today, but you think about The Office, right? And it's sort of a satire of what it looks like in some ways for a boss to do this and really not do it well, right? I think about
hysterical.
There's like the Michael Scott quote where he's like, I like to think of myself as a friend first, a lover second, and a boss third, in no particular order, right? But it's like this kind of gives, I think that quote gives a window into like a lot of the problems in the office are created because like Michael wants it to be a place of friendship. He wants it to be a place that's more than just work, but he does it in a way that doesn't actually work. So what's the non-office guide to creating a healthy workplace, I've
been thinking of The Office so many times as we've been talking already and different conversations. And first I have to note that MIT has a human dynamics lab. And one of the things that they found is that the best predictors of team success, to your point, isn't based on intelligence or experience. So the talent you bring to the equation isn't a predictor of team success. Really, it's communication patterns, social sensitivity. So in other words, how do people talk to each other? How do we pick up on one another's feelings? How do we pick up on one another's gifts? Even talking about work genius, right? Patrick Lencioni's work on work genius and looking at the gifts and talents you bring to the equation.
Yeah.
So as a leader of an organization, having a strategy for how my team fits together and how they jive together, really team building and investing in creating group norms for how we're going to navigate conflict, right? When I've built trust with you, when we have conversations at the Boone Center for the Family on how are we going to create curriculum, where are we going to take that curriculum, we don't always agree. And yet we've set these norms for how we disagree and how we're going to respect one another, right? And so casting a vision from the top for what it means to be successful as a team, and that every person's contribution helps us to get to a better outcome, even in disagreement. Some of those conversations have been most profound because they give us insight into how other people are going to interface with the work that we're doing, right?
And I think that's so important that people can disagree.
Yes.
If you feel like you kind of have
healthy
to give the sanitized version of what you think all the time, no one's going to get to the truth.
And we get so afraid to bring up a contrary position.
Yeah.
But when you have a team that is built on the ability to be vulnerable, the ability to have trust, and on the value for the gifts you bring, and that we're going to work together to come up with a solution that actually is the best solution, oftentimes you get there a lot faster when you've been able to listen to, rather than having the teams that go into the corner office like you see on The Office and tell all the reasons why that's going to go bad, and we're just going to sit and watch when it does go bad, right? And we're going to laugh about it, right? And at the Boone Center for the Family, we use, and particularly in the Relate Strong program, we cast a vision for what this idea of usness is. And it is a little bit different from how you would normally see this in other strategies. But us is really, in our current climate, we would see us as kind of like, Ben Affleck and whatever Jennifer he happens to be with, we call him Benifer, right? Like we put them together, and we sacrifice some of our own personality, and that's really not God's design for us. Like He's created you with unique gifts and talents, so it isn't you putting the best of you down and somebody else doing that so that you could be together. It's actually the best of you and the best of somebody else that creates, we're better together. Now, Bonhoeffer would talk about this. There are so many of our greatest thinkers that have done so much work on this idea of our interdependence and interconnectedness, and that when we can use the best of ourselves and leave space for that, that we can be so much stronger together. And we'd all recognize like competition's destructive to usness, right? Mm-hmm. Whether it's in marriage, whether it's in family, whether it's a team I work with at work. We would even say that compromise is destructive because it's just a nice way to compete. Because when I'm compromising with you, in my mind, I'm saying, well, we did it your way this time. Are you going to do it my way next time?
Yeah, that's right.
So I'm still keeping score. And in competition, I want me to win. In compromise, I still am going to keep score, and I'm going to make sure that I'm getting mine. We introduce a topic called co-laboring, which is kind of a balance of give and take. It's coming to the table, bringing the best ideas that we have, and then agreeing together, this is the way that we can move forward. Co-laboring is so much different than the other two, and it doesn't mean that we don't surrender ideas, right? It's not excluding the requirement to surrender. Maybe my idea wasn't the best, but it gets us out of the battle or the tug of war.
Yeah.
Because I can say, you bring up a good point. I didn't see it that way, but you bring up a good point. And how do we incorporate that into the way that we're going to solve this complex problem?
I think about even in the New Testament, right, where there's some serious disagreement early on in the church about, what ceremonies are necessary for entrance. Right. And Paul's
it's a big circumcision conversation.
Big circumcision conversation. Right? Paul, right, he says, and Peter, I opposed him to his face. Right. Because I saw that what he was doing wasn't biblical. It wasn't true to the gospel. Right. But imagine if instead of that, Paul had gone, I'm going to grumble off to people to the side.
Yeah. Or I'm going to be silent.
Or I'm going to be silent. And maybe next time they'll listen to me about this. Like, no, I'm going to care about the truth enough to disagree with someone that I care about. The council happens and they find the truth.
Yeah. And what a beautiful depiction of a team that has the health and vulnerability surrounded by a common vision. But this isn't about either of us being right. This is just about getting it right.
Yeah.
It's so different, right? And that happens in the most beautiful ways when we can invest in building connection. Most important, really, is trust. When we can build a safe place for us to bring the fullness of who we are, the fullness of our gifts, and learn how to use those gifts together so that we're more effective in accomplishing the goals we have. And by the way, when we do that, we celebrate better together, right? And we're more effective more often is what all of research tells us. So, this idea of investing in people at work and investing in building relationships is really important. It's an important part of your job satisfaction, quite frankly. It's not just so that I can go to work and have a friend. It's an important part of what we do all the way around.
At some point, we have all experienced a toxic work environment, whether it be in school or in work. But how does one navigate a toxic work environment? And also, can we repair these broken relationships within the workplace?
You know what? I think every one of us have been in difficult workspaces, right? And notice that working together as a team doesn't mean that everyone is easy to get along with. And I think, I just love this idea that Scripture over and over talks about this idea of humility, because sometimes I'm the difficult person in the room, and all of us are. And so I think when we begin to look at the idea of a toxic workplace, that's a phrase that people throw out all over the place. And it's so easy. We talk about narcissistic bosses. That word is another word we throw out. I think we have to be really careful. As in all my years of being in a therapeutic environment, we can have difficult people, but we're really quick to label those difficult people. And the second we throw a label on a situation, we limit our ability to work through that to find a healthy outcome. So I think differentiating in a hard work environment, I really want to start the work of differentiating from, is it a difficult boss? Or is this an oppressive, abusive, narcissistic boss? And how am I making that distinction? What's evidencing that? We as people, when we look for something, we find it. When we've put a filter on, we see through the lens of that filter. I've been in really difficult workspaces, and I've been in toxic workspaces. And they're very different. but the language can often look the same. And so the first thing I would say is that conflict is really hard in the workplace. It's hard because, like we talked about in the beginning, we spend a lot of time in our workplace. It's connected to our livelihood. It's connected oftentimes to our ability to survive, provide for our families. And so when we come into work environments that are hard, it does a lot of damage. It can impact our well-being and impact our flourishing in really significant and substantial ways. And so the first thing I would say is to put our hats on and be thinking about, is this a difficult environment? Or is this an environment that may not be for my good? Mm-hmm. Right? And I'm going to have two different strategies for how I'm going to handle that. Yeah. One is going to be, how do I survive, and what's my strategic plan for putting myself in another environment? The other is going to be just like going when my kids were in school and they would come home and they'd complain about a teacher. I would tell them, you may not get along with every teacher. You're going to get good teachers and you're going to get bad teachers.
Yeah.
Your job is to learn how to survive and thrive in those environments and be successful in spite of. That's your job. And that is a picture of what life is going to look like. You're going to come into workplaces where you have phenomenal mentors and phenomenal bosses. And you're going to come into workplaces where you're going to have very difficult to please bosses. And so learn to build the muscles to survive and thrive in both of those environments. And Paul gives us an example of that our thriving doesn't have to be dependent upon our circumstances. And that when we can stay regulated, we can become much better at discerning, is this an environment that's going to be destructive to me long-term, destructive to my well-being? Can I not build trust in this space? Or is this an environment where we have some obstacles? Every team is going to have conflict. If we bring ourselves to any scenario, there's going to be things that create conflict. Mm-hmm. And so then I would say, how do we stay regulated so that we can step into that conflict and have a positive outcome? Because workplace conflict can actually lead to safer environments when it's done the right way, where we build trust. Conflict is an opportunity for us to build trust with one another, or it's an opportunity for us to break trust with one another. And we play a lot into that outcome. We have a lot of power in that outcome. So if I come dysregulated and angry, I'm going to feed a system of dysregulation and anger. If I can stay calm, self-aware, self-controlled, aware that my identity, who I am, the sense of security, isn't dependent on what you think of me, then I'm able to address that situation without the emotional charge that often our workplace environments hold. And I'm much better off at trying to figure out a pathway forward and restoring relationship, right? Which as believers in any environment we're in, that's the hope, right? Yeah. That we're going to better our environments. Like we hope in scripture, I read over and over and over in all Pauline epistles and even Peter, it talks about like the environments we go into, we want to leave better. We want to be a blessing everywhere we go. We want to approach difficult things with gentleness and humility. And so if we can build those skills, and man, this is why we do what we do, by the way. I'm saying in a couple-minute podcast, a very simplified version of some steps you can take, but I spend full days and two-day workshops and trainings teaching people how to put these things into practice so that they can step into difficult environments and do a better job of navigating those in a way that keeps them healthy and strong. So I don't want to simplify it and say, oh, it's just so easy. You just do these things. That's not the case. But it really helps to discern a few things.
Yeah. And it's not easy, but it's worthwhile.
It is so worthwhile.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today and sharing about workplace relationships. For any listeners out there who are interested, please check out our Relationship IQ Relate Strong series for more info. Thank you for coming on the podcast today, Dee Dee, and we will see you for our next episode.
It's always a blessing to be here with you guys.